All right, let's talk about that moment you stare at a big case study assignment and just freeze. We've all been there. Today, we are going to completely demystify one of the big ones, the comparative literacy case analysis. My goal is that by the end of this, you'll have a clear, step-by-step playbook to nail this thing. This is the real puzzle, isn't it? You've got this pile of data, all these test scores, teacher notes, the student's background, and you're supposed to make sense of it all. Where do you even begin? Okay, let's get this out of the way right now because it is the single biggest mistake people make. Your job is not to just summarize the case file. It's to build a strong, convincing argument. Think of yourself less like a reporter listing facts and more like a detective building a case. And this whole approach has a name, argument-driven case analysis. I really love that detective analogy. You're digging for clues in the data, and then you use those clues to build an airtight case. Every single word you write has to serve that central argument. So how do we actually do that? Well, we've broken it down into a 6-step roadmap. If you follow these steps, you're going to be in great shape. Let's start with your core mission. Section 1, the core mission. Before you write a single word, you have to be crystal clear on what question your entire report is trying to answer. And here it is. This question is your North Star for the entire project. Let's look at the keywords here: primary challenge and best evidence. You're not listing every little thing. You are zooming in on the main issue and the strongest evidence that proves it. Which brings us to Section 2, building your central claim. And honestly, this is probably the most important sentence in your entire report. Your central claim is basically the one-sentence answer to that North Star question we just looked at. Just look at the difference here. On the left, the student struggles with reading. Well, yeah, we know that. That's an observation, not an argument. But look at the strong claim. It tells us why the student struggles: limited academic vocabulary and reduced fluency. Now that is an argument you can build a whole paper around. Section 3, evidence and analysis. Okay, so you've got your claim. Now you have to prove it. This is where you really put on your detective hat and start digging through that case file for the evidence that backs you up. Now, using evidence is more than just dropping in a test score. It's really a 3-step process. First, you select only the most relevant, powerful pieces of evidence. Second, you interpret them. You have to tell the reader why this piece of evidence matters. And finally, you synthesize, which is just a fancy way of saying you connect the dots and show the bigger picture. Here is a perfect example. The weak one on the left, the student scored below average, is just a fact. The question is, so what? The strong example on the right tells us so what. It interprets that score to show a specific breakdown in higher-level meaning-making. See the difference? That's real analysis. And this is what that synthesis part looks like. A good paper might point out that a student has both vocabulary issues and attention problems, but a great paper explains how the student's limited vocabulary might actually be causing the attention problems because they're struggling to follow along. You're not just listing issues, you're explaining how they're all connected. All right, Section 4, considering other possibilities. Now, this might sound a bit weird, but one of the best ways to make your argument stronger is to actually talk about the other possibilities. It shows you've really thought this through from all angles. This is exactly how you do it. You acknowledge another potential factor, like anxiety. You say, yeah, that might play a part, but then you pivot right back to your main point, explaining why the evidence for your claim is actually much stronger. This doesn't make your paper weaker. It makes you sound way more credible. Section 5, from analysis to action. All of this fantastic analysis doesn't mean a thing if we can't use it to actually help the student. So this section is all about turning your insights into real, practical recommendations. Your recommendations need to be super specific and directly tied to your analysis. Help with comprehension is just way too vague. But implement explicit instruction in summarization strategies. Now that's specific, it's actionable, and it directly tackles the problem you identified. And finally, Section 6, crafting your final report. You've done the hard work, the deep thinking. Now it's just about putting that professional polish on it so your ideas can really shine. Let's just do a quick run-through of the technical stuff. Remember, you're doing 2 separate reports. Keep an eye on that word count, maintain a formal tone, and please, write in full paragraphs. No bullet points in the final paper. These are easy points you don't want to lose. Keep your conclusions short and sharp. This is not the place to introduce new ideas. All you need to do is restate your central claim in a new way and leave the reader with the single biggest takeaway from your analysis. If you're wondering where you should be spending most of your time and energy, well, this chart tells you everything. Just look at that huge slice of the pie for analysis and synthesis. That is where the A grades are made. It is all about connecting the dots. And just remember, this is way more than just another assignment. This is practice for what you're actually going to do in your career. Analyze a complex problem, explain what's going on, and come up with a clear plan to help. These skills are what it's all about. So as you get ready to write, try not to think of this as just a report. You're actually telling a story that's backed up by solid evidence that explains the student's struggles and, most importantly, shows them a path forward. The only question left is, what story will your analysis tell?